Well, hello. Welcome everyone to the journey to CFP. This is the podcast where we explore the real stories, the challenges, and the victories behind becoming a certified financial planner. And my guest on today's episode is Victor Hicks III. Victor is a financial planning associate at Paragon Wealth Management. And what's unique about Victor is that he has relearned in this process. I would say the best way to describe it is how to be a better test taker. So, the healthy and consistent habits that he had possibly put down a while back and he has been able to bring them back to life. And Victor has passed after his second attempt, and he is one of my favorite people to talk to. I'm very excited to hear because, again, you are fresh off the press of passing, and that's always such an exciting time.
Yeah.
But I cannot wait to hear your story and the insights that you have. So let's dive in.
Yeah. No, great. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just going to start off by saying that a relationship with you and a relationship with Paul and a relationship with Jimmy has been like more than just a tutoring type of, relationship. So this is like a very easy conversation for me. I'm hoping to kind of get coffee or something with Paul in the next couple of weeks. So it's been really good to meet all of you and kind of working together to pass at CFP, but also just taking time to to have friendships and that type of thing. So
Thank you for saying that because that is my favorite part of this. I will talk to Paul as everybody's taking the test. I'm like, my kids, wait, they're not my kids. Oh my gosh, hold on. The people that I love so dearly who I'm praying for every single day. But so it is it's a relationship that it's hard to describe unless somebody is a part of it. So I appreciate you
yeah,
sharing that.
yeah, absolutely.
So tell me how your journey began. How did you get into financial planning and how did this whole process with breakthrough begin?
Yeah, um I passed on the second attempt. I I'm originally from Michigan. I went to Yale for undergrad. I learned about breakthrough. I learned about Paul. That's just what it was called. It was called Paul. From a good friend of mine named Javier. During I
He's on here. He's on
yes,
here.
I know. Yeah,
I love you both.
um I I spent some time right out of grad school, right out of undergrad, doing M&A work at an investment bank and a commercial bank. Realized that I didn't want to do as much transactional work and wanted to kind of have longer standing relationships with people. And I spent a lot of time thinking about like, what do I want to do in this business ethos world that we live in? And the relationships that you can build with people, you know, every year, multiple times a year, helping them with some of the most important things that they deal with in their life, their personal finances. It just immediately became something I felt like was a good long-term fit. And so I pivoted into working for a family office where it was still a very highly technical investment job. And I COVID came and I had an opportunity to work remotely in Michigan for a few years. And so from 2020 to 24-ish or so, I was a remote employee. I had a good thing going, but I didn't feel like I was getting the opportunity to kind of build out my own book of business maybe. And and so my father and I, who I work for, he's the leader of our practice in Michigan for Paragon. My dad has built a business for the last 30 years, working with small business owners and all of that. And I wasn't sure that working for a parent, let alone a family member, is not like something that everybody is ready to do. Um, and so but it just it made sense for me, and so I was working at another firm when I moved back in 2020, or when I kind of started with a Michigan based practice in 2024. I knew I wanted to get a CFP. And so I just decided that I was going to pursue the CFP. I was doing the bare minimum to cover the education requirements, the, 7 courses, all that stuff. I paid for like the cheapest, um, provider out there, didn't really spend a lot of time because everyone told me just get through the courses as quickly as you can so that way you can get to the
Study.
review. Yes, exactly. And and then I just kept putting it off. I kept putting off like my track. And it was fine because real life did happen. I have a 1 year old now. I got engaged. There was a number of things that happened in my life that it made sense to, push the timeline back. But I was going to sit for the November 2025 exam. Um, wasn't feeling great about it, pushed it off one more time, and then decided to take the test in March and was like, you know what? I'm I don't know if you watch basketball much, but there is
I love this.
okay, well there's a guy who just signed with the Philadelphia 76ers that goes by LeBron James that he has what's called like a feel out game one of his series. And I feel like the first test that I took was a little bit of like, am I where I need to be? Like, is this, and I'm not saying that I was mad when I did not pass. Like I put hours and hours into it, but it was a little bit of like a um how prepared am I? How underprepared am I? And I got into that exam room, um and the amount of time that I spent on questions, just rereading, like wasting time looking at questions that what is a oh I'm sorry, probably not supposed to share actual
Yeah,
questions, but
no, no,
just
no. Zip, zip, zip.
but the actual questions that just were not, it was not valuable for me to spend more than 30 seconds on that question, right? And so then I got to the end and didn't have a lot of time for certain questions, or I did not um you know I didn't utilize my break really at all. I didn't bring a lunch. I didn't
Jeez,
um
Vic, come on, man.
yeah, I spent a lot of time or I didn't utilize the time the best that I could that day. And so then after the very fun feeling of telling your family members and some of your coworkers that you didn't pass and having those just that humbling experience, um I was like, I need help. And so I reached back out to Hav, who I had already. So this is how I got connected to Breakthrough. So when I was in like the final month and a half of preparing for the March exam, I saw one of these videos on a YouTube short. So great promo, Jessica. And I saw a YouTube short where Hav was being interviewed by you, and I was like, okay, cool. I Googled it. I didn't talk to Hav about it. I just went to Google your website, hit send or hit purchase, put my card information in, and I was like, I just need more questions. And then, but he kept mentioning in his video, like working with Paul. And so then I reached out to him. I was like, do they provide tutoring? After I didn't pass, I was like, do they provide tutoring? He was like, yeah, man, I think you should get connected with them. Cool. And so that probably like 2 or 3 days after I didn't pass, I reached out to Paul and we met. I met with Jimmy as well. And I met with someone, either Paul or Jimmy, probably twice a week for that 4 month period. I can talk for a minute about like the break that I did actually take. I mean, I did take a couple weeks off, but I did not. But I had the first couple of sessions with Paul during that break that I took be just really geared around like test taking. So we didn't really cover a lot of content. And really working on my routine and my study habits. And that's one of the things that I did not expect to get out of this was um, being a better test taker, as you mentioned. Like I went to a good school.
I haven't heard
Took
of
some,
it. Where is it? What is it?
I went
Yale?
to I went
Where's it?
to I went to I
Where's
went
that?
to I I went to I'm sorry, I took a couple classes that like Hob will probably remember this class called Intermediate Micro that was like the hardest class I've ever taken because I don't like calculus mixed with economics, and it was just not fun. And the CFP was harder than I expected. So I can talk all day. I just wanted you to kind of get a picture in a sense for like how I got to the sessions, and the value was me me recognizing that I needed to do some work around the edges in terms of being a better test taker.
What does it, when you say test taker, routine, like
Yeah.
what did you learn? Because
Um,
yes, the facts and the material, but what are some of the light bulb moments or takeaways?
yeah, so there's a couple like test taking um, you know, bullets that I have in my head. Like, you do not need to answer. The CFP is not, in my opinion, is not asking you each of the 7 or 8 different buckets of questions. They're not all designed the same. And so for like professional conduct questions or ethics questions, they're looking for a decisive answer that most times the right answer is not going to be, or in rare cases, the answer going to be decline them as a client. Like certain things have to become, like apparent that you should not work with them. But that's not the best answer for everything. Um, I learned about playing it safe and or playing for safety, as Paul says, when it comes to estate based questions. Like that was my weakest area after failing the first time, and we probably spent the most amount of time on estate. And so th- it's so funny that the exam that I got was not very technical at all. They say
And
that
so while the person next to you is a different, like everybody's different. So you have to go in knowing it all because God only knows what you're going to get.
yeah, I got a lot of theory or just comprehension, reading comprehension, as Paul calls this, a reading comprehension exam. I got a lot of reading comprehension questions. I got very little on the analysis or math based type of questions. So but back to the test taking strategies, having a mindset of here's the clue that is written in the first sentence or two, and then going from there and saying, okay, so these answers are not addressing what this type of question should bring to your mind. Um, outside of how to take the test, how to study for the test, it looks different for everyone, but I've learned that I need to do this when my brain is the most fresh, and that
What
means I
does
need to
that
do
mean?
I need to do that. I need to do that when it's the morning time before everyone wakes up.
Why are you
And
laughing on that part?
I'm laughing because Hav knows this. I have not historically been always the best morning person in the world. So, and Paul told me on day one or session 1 or 2, he was like, "You're going to be a morning person after this." I was like, "Yeah." Does anyone else have afternoon sessions, Paul? And he was like, "I mean, yeah, you can talk. Jimmy is available. We have a team. And I, I, uh, I
What
tell
time
him
are
that
your sessions? What time are your sessions?
Um, my sessions Monday through Friday, or the weekday sessions, were 5:45, and
Okay.
then 7 a.m.s on Sundays. He gave me a break on the weekend. So
I'm a 5 o'clock clubber. I was getting up at 4:45.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I get you.
And I guess the last thing I'll just say on the test taking front was so I watched a number of your videos, and I heard from Paul and others the value of doing like 100 questions a day as we are getting closer to the exam. But when you have covered and familiarized your brain with that much material, there are questions on the exam that I didn't think we were going to be there. And so as I was going through some questions with Paul in one of our like final month or so sessions, and it was a question about some act or some rule or some government based, like legislation, I was like, Paul, that's not going to be on the exam. And that question wasn't on the exam, but that type of question was on the exam. And having that breadth of content covered, which just happens through, I called it maybe 80 or 90 plus a case, because I needed to do some case practice as well. But 100 questions a day accomplishes that. And that's not at all what I was doing before March, at all.
I I call it exposure therapy,
Yeah.
because I think I like how you use the LeBron James feel, like the first game is the feel out game, but it, I had a few of those. I had two before the real game, but uh, glad you only did one. I I think part of the 100 questions a day is you can't spend 3, 4 minutes on a question when you don't get it because you'll never get through that many. So it's like
Yeah.
for me, after the first few days, I'm never going to get to 100 a day. Like I'm spending hours and hours. And then I was like, we're doing these in under 2 minutes. Like there's just no, if I don't have it, move on, move on. Which then by the time I got to the exam, if I had a question where I'm like, I'm not 100% certain, it's okay, move on. It didn't
Hmm.
use all my brain cells and create the stress and panic because I spent 5 minutes too many on a question.
Sure. Sure.
What do you feel was the biggest difference in studying on your own
Hmm.
versus like having a one-on-one tutor or working with breakthrough? Because again, going to Yale, that school that I've never heard of, I'm sure
Hmm.
you were pretty good at tests, you knew how to study, you got stuff done, you did investment banking, you pulled the hours, you've done all that. What is different in how you approached it this time?
Yeah. The so doing like a diagnostic on every question was extremely valuable. So
Painful too, though, right? At first.
one more time. Oh yeah. Well, you made it seem like Paul was um meaner or
Oh,
less
well,
fun
no. Hold on,
than
time
he
out. Let
actually.
me explain, everybody. Hold on. You seem very calm and chill like Paul. I am not a calm and chill. So
Okay.
you can come out and defend yourself with, well, this is why. I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
you're asking me what? How dare?
Hmm.
Like, I got very riled up. See how
Yeah.
Nick is nice and calm and steady the whole time, and I'm moving with my hands. Thus the difference why.
No, um there was a um I appreciated having questions that I didn't know the answer to beforehand. So I would prepare probably like, you know, 30 minutes for 2 or 3 days each, beforehand reviewing the estate questions that we were going to go over. And we probably wouldn't go over all of them, but we would go over, um, we would go over them in such detail that you got more out of it
Mm-hmm.
than, and we can get to Zahn in a minute, which is the other thing that I utilize to supplement. But when I would just, you know, go through a Zahn question and hit, the answer, or on the breakthrough site in the question bank, just hit an answer and reading through each of those, you're only going to get so much because your brain is just going to naturally go to the correct answer, right? Your brain is going to be like, I got it wrong. Okay, what was the right one? And just focus on that. But when you go through sessions with a tutor like Paul and Jimmy, you are spending time going line by line on why which ones are wrong or why which ones and why that one is right. And then a person who loves to ask questions like me will say, okay, so if that question had said this, you know, yes, is that true? Yeah, that's true. No, 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 no. That actually only applies to, nope, married file. Nope, that doesn't apply. And so, because for me, I felt like as my brain was starting to form like just memory or just like understanding, a deeper understanding, I took away so much more every time that I had sessions versus, um, my individual studying, which was helpful. And, I feel like I got better with that over time, how to study by myself. But studying with a tutor, it was just um, a high impact, hour plus of time spent together.
I think it's the quality, not the quantity there too,
Absolutely.
because you may have prepped 30, 40 questions before, but you may get through 10 on some days. And,
Hmm.
at first you might say, I'm spending an hour, I got through 10. Like, what the heck? We're never going to get through this. But what you learn in dissecting each and every one of those is so much more powerful than getting through 40 questions and knowing the right or wrong answer. And I think that
Yeah,
ties back to when you go into the exam, um, there's clues within the question. So you feel
absolutely.
more in control when you're reading them and you're like, oh, that's the clue. You may not even know the right answer necessarily, but you can eliminate two based on what you learned when you dissected the questions in your tutoring sessions.
So this is a great time to bring this up. I was gonna, you know, maybe wait till the end or something, but the exam that I got, or the exam that I took on July 17th, I attribute like literally like at least 70 to 80% of why I passed because I worked with Paul and Jimmy. And I say that because there were a number of questions. So my mom and others, met me afterwards and we had a nice celebration and stuff. But they asked me, how'd you feel about the exam? And I would say that half the questions I didn't feel great about. And I would say feeling great is a feeling is a space that you will be in for someone who doesn't have like Paul level mastery of the material, right, where he just knows them as opposed to process of elimination saying no, that's a bad probate response. Okay, nope, that's a bad one as well. So now I'm down to two, and then we are that's clearly the better answer, so I'm going to go with that, but I don't like that answer.
Right.
And
Right.
and that was a common occurrence. I feel like on my test day was knowing how to take the exam rather than you know knowing the facts. Like I know the fact of you know 24,500 is what a person could put into a defined contribution plan. Before we start adding that stuff to it, like I know that number. But
That's never
that
the
yeah,
actual
yeah,
question.
right.
I memorized all those facts for what? No, but you need that. But there's like a calming. I love how you describe that because maybe you're confident on, I don't know, 5, 10% of them, but it's better to, I think, not feel that confident on 30% and no idea on the rest versus like an even keel. I'm eliminating. Okay, I don't feel like it's the perfect answer, but I know that I did everything I could. And yeah, it's a different feel.
Hmm. Yeah, I utilized the first time I took the exam, I did not utilize the right click feature, which is cross off the wrong answers. Um, I didn't know you were going to be this hard on me for the first time I took the exam, but it's just like going through it second time around and seeing how different of an experience, how different you feel going through those test questions. Was well, I wasn't surprised that I passed, but I
Right.
also did not feel again, I didn't feel great like, you know, there was no easy questions, I felt like, right? Like what's the easiest way? What's the best way to do this? I'm like, cool, boom, I know that answer. But a lot of those questions weren't there.
I think the other, when you, a lot of the prep programs will tell you if you don't know an answer, like have your go-to, whether it's B, C, A, or D.
Yeah, yeah,
And the first exam, even kind of the second, C, I think it was C stands for correct, so I would go with that. But then halfway through, I'm like, I've chosen way too many, so if I don't know it, I guess I'll put B's. So like the whole process, like there was no test taking skill there, but I you walk in different and you read the questions so different when
yeah.
you
Hmm.
have been taught to break it down
Yeah.
very, very detailed, working on the questions.
Yeah.
What do you now know about yourself that you did not know before you? I was going to say July 17th. However, you probably started to feel things before that.
Um, so before this exam, I definitely struggled with, or before July, I definitely struggled with a little bit of imposter syndrome because I went to a good school that you'd never heard of, and I went to and I've um you know I've been blessed to be in certain positions and certain careers and all that stuff that like you know I attribute all this to working hard. Um, and I've never felt like I was a high IQ person. I still probably don't feel like super high IQ. And there's a difference between, like you say, quality over quantity in time, or working smarter, not harder. Um, and like so, sidetrack or tangent onto the benefit and the value of taking a full day off,
I was
right?
going to literally interrupt you if you did not just say that right there. I was like, wait, wait,
Yeah,
wait, we got to go back to, okay, yes, yes.
yeah, because leading up to the exam a couple days before, and then I'll answer your question. I took the exam on Friday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I did nothing. I did my best to do nothing. And my dad would check in and say, how you feeling? You know, what you do today?" And I said, I mean, I did work that you know about, but I didn't do a whole lot. And he was like, "That's so different. I thought you would be cramming like right up until the exam." I'm like, "No, that's not what Paul says to do." He's like, "Well, okay, we're gonna trust Paul." So I just I I think that so I okay, so I did well enough on the ACT to get into a good school, but I think that my GPA drove more of that acceptance or admission, right? Which I attribute to working harder, to studying, to having a good routine and all that stuff. But I never like when I got on the ACT, the variation between like my lowest score and my highest score was wide. Like I was not like a just a solid test taker. And through this process, I believe that I'm a much better test taker. Because so this is what I learned about myself was that um you can be 10 years removed from school, and you can go through the year and a half to really get in the habit, which is what it took me because I didn't start actually committing to weekend studying for, 3 to 4 hours minimum at a time. I just started doing that until maybe 2 months before the March exam, right? So let's just call it this year. So around the holidays, I was like, all right, I gotta start cranking this up. and um and I didn't really, put the time in that was necessary, but I always like doubted or had a question about whether I could do a like difficult exam. And that's probably the biggest thing that I learned about myself was that this exam is not it's not rocket science, right? It's not it's worded, and it's such a breadth of material that it is difficult, but it's not something that is unachievable either.
Right. Nope. Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself in this process. We'll leave it at that. It's a journey, and I I don't wish I passed the first time. If you had told me that originally, I would have said you're nuts, but there's so much that you learn about yourself in the process. And by
Hmm.
the time you do pass, whether it's the second, third, fourth, or fifth,
Yeah.
you have been on a journey. That's why this is called Journey to CFP, that you learn
Hmm.
so much more than just the facts and the information. It is truly um, life changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, this is a different conversation, but I'm glad that I failed because I also am a better advisor by working with Paul, right? Like I'm there are there are a number of times where I was relying on my 3 year, 4 years in, you know, wealth management, high net worth space, business that I'm in to get me through some of these questions, especially the planning based, or it's all planning, but the the retirement or um general principles questions. I was like, no, I know what a Roth conversion looks like because I've done those for clients. But then when you are sitting down and you're answering a question and I'm working through with Paul and I'm like, well, it's because I did. He said, okay, so that may be true, but there's also, I don't want to call it CFP world because that sounds like, belittling or something, but it's a different um putting your real life experience into a question can hurt you sometimes. Because they are they are teaching on a specific topic in a specific
Yeah,
way,
bolts
in
of
my opinion.
yeah.
Yeah. So being able to keep in my mind, like, okay, so that was fine the way that we did it, absolutely. But like the test is viewing mutual funds and the way that they name them very specifically, right? So, and liquidity is viewed and discussed very differently, right? Or at least sometimes how in practice we might discuss it. So I come in and I say, "Oh no, that's the most liquid," and that's probably not the best answer.
No, I remember that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Like the one of those questions, you're like, but I thought it's like, nope. Let's go back to how we're supposed to be reading this textbook stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I just want to say I am so grateful that we got to connect on this day. I know we are supposed to chat last week, and you got to go celebrate in the warm weather of Miami. Is
The
it so?
humid
Would you
weather.
say what?
Sorry, I cut you off. I was saying the humid weather. I just can't forget that.
Oh, stop. What would you say to somebody who is clicking play on this video and they just took the exam in July and it did not go the way that they were hoping and are feeling slightly slash very discouraged and looking for a hand?
Um, I will say that um, you know, this exam is not again, it's an attainable exam, I think, like regardless of how much experience that you have coming into this field. Um, it is it is one that um often people are not able to, pass on their first time without some type of coaching or study group or whatever it is. And as I've been taking and preparing for the exam, I've learned about the number of people, one who don't, there's some people who don't have their CFPs that are well respected advisors that I know, right? That that do very well, that don't have their CFPs. And so to me, and there's others that I know like myself and you and others that have needed to take it multiple times. Um, there is there's a strength in a more productive time spent learning than what most of us are accustomed to in terms of how we study, right? Like a lot of us will spend time reading, going line by line, and I think that a lot of this stuff you can't learn about what's most efficient or most effective in your study time until you at least, you know, talk to someone like one of us that has, worked with a tutor before or actually had the opportunity or try it out yourself. I'm saying that again because I go back to the very large percent of my what I attribute to passing was because um sometimes I had Zahn's voice in my head and I had Paul's voice in my head, but I was going through the exam and deciding certain things that I would have not decided certain questions certain ways if I had not had that experience with a tutor. So it's a um, it's an experience that you'll be better for, right? I think if you hear there's some folks that I've seen you interview. I'm forgetting her name, that have, taken the test 3 and 4 times. Most of us don't want to go through that type of stuff, right? That's not we don't just wake up in the morning and press take the CFP 4 times button, right? But at the same time, um, this is not a this is not a field that most people are. Um, a lot of the folks seek out the CFP because of the recognition, but also there's a time spent. Like I don't mean to sound negative, but I if I were to look back at myself and see how much time I had put into the CFP, even if I didn't work with a tutor or if I was, just doing a study group or something like that. Like you can't study for this test for a month and think that you're going to walk in and pass the exam. In my experience, right? Like there's a certain level of like I like to think about it like it's a mile wide and an inch short, but that inch short you have to have a little bit of mastery on that inch short. So
Yes.
it's more than an inch, right? Like
A
um
mile wide and a quarter of a mile deep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely more than the normal. Like I know a little bit about it. A little bit about it is not enough.
Right.
Um, so putting in the time, is helpful. But so I saw this stat that was like super encouraging, right? Not encouraging as I was getting ready to take the test. That the statistics on folks who pass the exam the second time goes down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Don't
fifty
look at
percent
those
of
numbers, people. Don't look at them. Keep your blinders on. You are not one of them.
the 50% of the people pass the exam the second time as they do, like maybe it's 60 or 70% the first time, and um, and then I've tried to figure out why. And the main takeaway that I came with is because people are doing the same thing and not changing their routine. They are not, and I'm a testament to someone who's changed their routine. Right, I've shared already how I felt about the exam when I walked out, and I passed. And there's you know, the human brain is like, ah, I did okay in this, so I'm just going to spend all my time on this area. Cool. But if you're studying the same way, I think that's where most of us come up short is by not at least having the, outside perspective to say, this is how I would study differently. And this is how, this is how you could easily pick up X number more questions or a stronger hold on that material because you spent time doing X with another perspective. Studying for this exam in a vacuum is going to be very difficult.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one. I cannot agree with you more. No, but I appreciate your perspective. I think it's extremely beneficial to get an outside perspective, regardless of if somebody ends up working with a tutor or not. Just how would you do this differently? Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
Mm-hmm.
So doing something and hearing about it from a different perspective might make people not fall into that 50% and instead be the ones that change their study habits and therefore pass.
So I would say this. Can I talk about Zahn for 1 second here?
Yeah.
Just as a comparison, right? So um, I think that Zahn has a great program, and there is it definitely contributed to me having a stronger hold of the material. I went to the live review. I didn't the first time I took the exam in March. I did not spend a lot of time on the live review. I probably went half the days. I didn't do it in the pre-study. I did all of that this time. But what I did with the help of Paul was I had like a barometer in my head of like how am I overworking my brain, and I kept that. It was like a daily like assessment of how am I burning myself out. And anytime I got closer than I wanted to, I took a day off or I just took time away from the material, because your brain is not going to be able to digest and process this information without a fresh mind, which is why I do it first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
um, and without, having that one day off. So I'll tell you this really quick example. I went to the Zahn Live review, um, 3 days in. There's 4 days or whatever. 3 days in, I felt burnt out by like 1 p.m. or something like that. I stood up and I wasn't physically tired. I was mentally tired.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, by like 1 p.m., um, I I stood up and I went to the back of the room because I was just trying to change the pace or something. And I don't like being that person that just leaves. Especially, we pay for this. Everybody else is looking at me around like, what's wrong with you? And I I waited to our next break. I went outside to talk to the instructor. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna take off. And he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, so you're telling me that you're burnt out. The instructor was talking out loud about how tired he was, right? And sorry, don't laugh. But all of us are like, we're not retaining information. So I know I'm not the only person in the room. So I went home and watched a movie and did nothing and spent time with my kids. So like, it's just,
But then
and
you
again,
come back to the table the next day ready to go. And I think that's why
exactly,
that one day off, especially like the biggest nugget I'm getting is you learn to listen to your body and you aren't trying to cram and do a marathon 100 days in a row. Like
yeah,
your body can't recover and it can't perform.
yes. So it's a it's not EQ, but it's an awareness of
Mhm.
where you are mentally. Like I I was going over in the review, I was going over certain retirement plan concepts like a 401k, which I feel like I know a 401k pretty well. And I was like, I'm not comprehending any of this.
No, it's
And
another
when you get to
language.
that, yeah. And when you get to that point, you need to take some time. So and that's I've seen you ask this to others, so I'll just share my experience. The last couple of days leading up to this, it was hard for me to not do anything. I mean, to not study. Like it was difficult for me. I took it on Friday. It was difficult for me on Tuesday in the afternoon, evening to just put the materials down, knowing that I wasn't going to touch it
Knowing you
much
can't
again.
pay enough, you're like, but there's, wait, what about that other? Yeah. I had to schedule, you've probably heard this, I had to schedule 90-minute or 2 hour salt floats. So I legit was in a bath of water and couldn't do
Yeah,
anything for 2 hours.
yeah. Well, the other thing on habits was that I did not. I probably studied like half of my study time before the March exam was in the evening. I didn't study at all in the evening in the July exam because or leading up to the July exam because I knew my brain wasn't going to retain any of it. So whatever I could get in the mornings for an hour and a half, and then weekends and maybe on a quick lunch break or something like that. But I was not interested in studying where I felt like the benefit of that study time was not going to be as good as or as great as it could be.
And you would go
So
into the red on the barometer in the process.
yes, right. So
I like that, the barometer. We got to put something, whoever, I don't post these. However, something on the beginning of like the barometer of something so that people know because I'm going to refer to that multiple times. So
yeah,
when I talk to people. But no, I appreciate you so much, Vic. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. Welcome to the other side. And I cannot wait for you to continue to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get so much stuff done other than studying. So thank you so much.
no problem, no problem. I have thought about like what am I going to do with all my time now?
You'll find
I mean,
you'll
I have other things too. I have a wedding to plan and I have other things to do.
yeah,
But
take some of it off the plate for your fiance. That would be great.
yeah. So anyway,
All right. Well, thank you again.
yeah. Thank you very much, Jessica.